I wanted to discuss some things about paper preparation and determining types of paper, and also figuring out what size border you might want to choose for your prints. So I have a sheet of paper here. This is a sheet of Canson edition paper, and all paper, different types of paper have different qualities that are good for different things, and Canson edition paper is a pretty standard paper that is good for printmaking all around. So I could use this for screen printing, etching, block prints, lithography, and it's pretty durable. It's a pretty thick paper. It is acid free, and it is 100% cotton. It's also fairly affordable, and you can get it in larger size than the standard 22 by 30. So this is a pretty good paper, and that's what we're going to be using today. You can see that there is a deckled edge here, and that has to do with the way that the sheet formation is formed. And this is not handmade paper. This is made by a machine, and this straight edge right here lets me know that this was a large roll and it was cut from a roll. If the deckled edge was all the way around, it would be more likely a single sheet made from a single decal and molden decal, and it could possibly be handmade when you see that. Another thing about paper is some of the cheaper types, you don't see any, I'm not sure if you can see that, don't see any watermarks. I can check the corner of these papers, and if I can see a watermark, it might say Arches Cover or Reeves BFK. That's just another type of paper that is very common in printmaking. You know, it's one of my favorite papers is Reeves BFK and Arches Cover. So I have a clean work surface. I wiped everything down before because I don't want to get any ink or debris on my paper. I also want to make sure that my ruler is clean, so you might want to run a washcloth over the back of this, as well as my paper trimmer, my paper cutter. So this would be a paper trimmer. Now, this is different than a ruler. You can see it has a straight edge, a machined edge. It's very sharp. So this is what I'm going to use to trim my paper. In printmaking, we don't typically use paper cutters that often. There's times when we do use razor blades, or there's times when we do want a very, very sharp machined edge when we're doing registration for certain types of techniques. And we need a very, very clean edge. For general purposes though, we try to use a tear bar to tear down our paper. So first, let's look at a few different images just so people can get an understanding of what we want to think about when we're trimming our paper. Now, this standard paper size is 22 by 30. If I were to cut this in half, that would give me two sheets that would be 15 by 22. And if I were to cut those again, that would be a quarter sheet. So sometimes people might refer to a half sheet, that would be 15 by 22, or a quarter sheet, which is 15 by 11. And that is a pretty standard size for print exchanges and things like that. We want to consider our paper size when we're printmaking because, things will go in the mail. Oftentimes we want to make our prints ready to put in a frame so that if somebody buys the print alone, they don't have to worry about having it sized to fit into a frame. If you are printing on paper that is very common sizes like 5 by 7, 4 by 6, 8 by 10, 8.5 by 11, 11 by 14. Those paper sizes can go right into a store-bought frame, and you don't have to do anything in terms of like matting, cutting a mat and things like that. So it's very good for just the average buyer who's gonna buy something for 15 bucks and they want to put it in a frame. So that's something that you should think about. Also, we want to think about our borders. How big of a piece of paper do we want? What type of print are we making? And do we want to leave no room around the edges of the paper? Do we want something that's like 1/4 of an inch around the paper? Do we want something very close to the edge of the paper? All of these decisions, you know, we want to think about beforehand. This is a little bit more like a 1/2 inch spacing. What you want to consider though is typically when somebody mats and frames an artwork, especially a print, we want to see that title, the number, and the artist name in the frame. So like when I'm cutting a window mat, I want it to go up to about there. Now some people, if you don't have enough room on your paper to create that mat, that might be a little bit tough to do that. So when I'm matting this one, I might actually have to have the mat come over the image. Same with something like this. So this is a bleed print right here. It's a beautiful bleed print, but it doesn't leave me any room for the mat. So if I'm matting this one, I have to create my window mat, and it's going to cover up part of this image. Now there's framing techniques that allow you to bypass this, where you're doing a floating mat, but typically, you know, people will probably have to cover up some of that imagery, and we don't necessarily want that. So, you know, think about your borders, think about your paper size. What is it that you're making? If you're making a postcard, then you can go right to the edge. If you're intend to mat and frame these, then you might want to have a little bit more of a border here. But if you're just giving away the artwork, then you don't have to worry too much about it. But typically, I like to have a little bit of, like, at least a 1/2 inch around my image. But you know, there's more times than not that I am giving myself multiple inches all the way around the image, and then I can trim my prints down later. That's my preference. I like to give myself lots of room, and then I'll trim down my prints later. So okay, my students right now are working on a intaglio piece, and it is going to be 6 by 9 inches. So I'm going to measure for this, and I'll tell you a couple different things in regards to that. So I'm going to go ahead. I like to sketch everything out. My plate size is 6 by 9 inches, and my paper size is 22 by 30. And my addition that I have to make an addition of 5, right? That's what I'm requiring my students to do. And they might be able to get away with using just 1 sheet of paper for this. So let's talk about how we figure out how to trim our paper down for our addition. Okay, so we have a plate that's 6 inches by 9 inches, and typically I'm asking them that they do a minimum of 1 inch all the way around the border, so that when they have their paper, that will give them a 1/2 inch all the way around their image, 1/2 inch, right? And 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here. Now that's not a lot. So, I'm sorry, 1 inch. That would be 1 inch all the way around. So if my plate size is 6 by 9, I would add 2 inches to each of these dimensions. So my paper size would be 8 by 11. Now that number fits nicely into 22 by 30, because 11 goes into 22 twice, so I could cut my paper right here, and 8 goes into 30 3 times. So I would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different pieces of paper when I cut it down to this size. Now, if I wanted a bigger border, let's say I wanted 2 inches all the way around, then I would just take this number here, 6 by 9, and add 4 to each of these. So my paper size would be 10 by 13. Now this number 10 and 30, that's good. So 10 goes into 30 3 times. So I can go 10 inches, 10 inches, 10 inches. And but 13 only goes into 22 once, right? So I would only get 3 pieces of paper just by adding an extra inch all the way around my page. So, you know, for conservation's sake and for, you know, being thrifty, I would recommend people just do an 8 by 11 size paper, because you'll get twice as many sheets out of one sheet, one full sheet of 22 by 30. So that's what we're going to do now. Now we're going to do some measuring. And a lot of people really don't have a lot of experience with measuring paper. I do a lot of woodworking and I measure paper all the time. So when I do this, I'm going to measure along the edge of the paper. I don't want to measure in the middle of the paper because this will change how accurate my dimensions are. So I want to find the edge of the paper, and sometimes it's slightly over 22, so I'm just going to split the difference. I don't have to have this be perfect. There might be times when I do need this to be perfect, but for our use, I'm just going to kind of split the difference here with the 22 and go to 11. I'll do the same on this side. Split the difference, so I'm just kind of centering that a little bit. There we go. And now I'm going to tear my paper. So I'm switching to my tear bar now, and I'm going to line this up as accurately as I possibly can, and then line this one up. Now I'm just going to double check, you know, I want this to be very accurate. And so this is the beveled edge here, that's the tear bar edge, and I'm just going to apply some pressure down, and I'm just going to gently pull, lift my hand, rotate, and keep coming like this. Now I might want to switch. There we go. And now sometimes the front of the paper might be the same as the back of the paper. Sometimes the front of the paper will be slightly different. So you want to make sure that you orientate your paper the same, so I don't flip it over. You know, I want to keep my paper top side up, you know, if that's important to me. And then I'll probably find this tear bar edge again. And now we need to split it up into 11 inches. Or, I'm sorry, 8 inches. So line those 2 pieces of paper back up. If I had, say, if I had a big stack of paper, I could do this as well, but I probably would only want to do a few sheets at a time, like this. So 8 inches, and I'm using pencil. Never use a pen. 16, 24, and then do the same over here on this side. 8, 16, 24. Switch to my tear bar. Now this is going to be, so watch, I can do this 1 sheet at a time now, just like this. And I could probably get away with doing that with two more sheets, maybe 6 more sheets, but if I do any more than that, then the thickness of the paper is going to start to build up and I won't have a nice clean tear line. Now when I have 2 sheets like this, I can probably get away with tearing both sheets at the same time as well. But you know, just be careful with that. If you choose to do it like that. So there, now I have 6 sheets. They're all in the same orientation. They're all pretty much accurate, the same accurate level of accuracy. They don't have to be absolutely perfect for what I'm doing, but they do need to be pretty close. Now, if I have a 6x9 plate, I will have a 1-inch border all the way around on my paper size, which is 8 by 11. So it turns out really nice. I've got 2 scraps here. I could probably save these. They look like they would meet like a 5 by 7 size later, so I'm gonna hang on to this, and that's about it. At this point, I would put my paper in the water in the bath, and I would start printing. So hopefully that was helpful. Bye.